everybody. It's Nicole Bonner and Thriving in Chiropractic, and I have my partner in crime here, Dr. Colton O'Brein. Hey, Colton.
What's up? We're back.
We're back again for another awesome week on Thriving in Chiropractic, and we have an awesome guest with us this week. We have Dr. Randi Ross. Hey, Dr. Randi.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be able to share some stuff with your listeners and viewers today.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for contributing to our show here. Let's jump right in. Dr. Randi, do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are and who you are as a chiropractor, maybe how you got into chiropractic a little bit? Give us a little bit of background.
Sure. So when I was, I think about 13 or 14, I was having some trouble with my neck. Chiropractor in town helped me. And then kind of interestingly enough, when I was just out of high school, I was doing a part-time job at a catering hall, and it just so happened the owner's son was in New York Chiropractic College. He was an intern at the time, so all of his buddies were waiters in this catering hall to make money. And it just kind of, all of a sudden, I was like immersed, willingly or unwillingly, in chiropractic. I was always a bit of a science geek anyway. So it just kind of evolved from there. The college in our county had a special program, pre-chiropractic, that was affiliated with New York Chiropractic College. And it just kind of rolled out from there. I'm a little weird for a Brooklynite because I was born in Brooklyn, but my parents got me out. Most people don't go back, but I did. That's where I went back to, I say, my roots. And I practiced for almost 15 years, had a very successful practice. And then, unfortunately, a very bad pregnancy forced me into retirement. But, you know, as Al Pacino says, every time you think you're out, they pull you back in. It seemed like when I was ready to go back to work, no matter where I turned, it seemed to be opportunities within chiropractic. So it was everything from different marketing programs to working directly for chiropractors, doing events and screenings. And, you know, anytime I seemed to deviate, I again seemed to kind of get pulled back in. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I was working with the founder of this company, Premier Practice Consultants. And little by little, we were doing more and more. And then ultimately, he's like, hey, I'm like 85. I'd like to retire. He'd been a chiropractor, you know, since he was like 22, and then did this after his first retirement. So we took over, was very excited. The company really grew because as an older guy, he didn't really have much of a virtual understanding of how to connect with everybody out there. So we've really taken it. And the great thing is I've taken all my knowledge of chiropractic that we get in school, you know, the basis, and then my knowledge of being in practice. I had the pleasure of having a dad that was the greatest salesman in the world. And he really built all of his businesses on building relationships with people. And as a little kid, if I was off from school, I'd, you know, go right along with them and hang out with them. And you just kind of pick some of this stuff up by osmosis. And maybe it's a little in my blood, but that's how I built my practice, was really what I now refer to as relationship marketing. So whether that's just building relationships with, I mean, I was lucky I was in a city, so there was a lot of businesses to walk up and down and build relationships with. Or, you know, there was some group or organization or anything like that. I really focused not on the immediate gratification of getting a patient, but really about building those relationships. And it really served me well. And now it's the only way I really know how to operate in any business. That's what I still do now. I really try, like, I'll talk to someone, calls me, I'll talk to them for an hour, even though I know they're not a buyer, or I don't have anything they need, or they're not ready, or they're a student, because I know that's really the foundation of any solid business. Social media is great, marketing's great, the virtual world is great, but there's nothing like having a client that you built a relationship with, or a patient that is so happy with the service you provide and the way you treat them that they refer you patient after patient, or in my case, new client after new client or new client. That is priceless, and you can't really put a price tag on that. So here we are, 35 years since I graduated from New York Chiropractic College. I really date myself every time I say that. and I'm still here. And I don't plan on going anywhere. We exclusively serve chiropractors. This has been an amazing journey for me to wind up here at this stage of my life, and to really have an understanding of what chiropractors need and what they're doing wrong sometimes when they come to me, what they're doing right, and being able to really connect with people, and have a greater understanding of what they do is really exciting for me. It's very different from other things. And this business, which is really weird, most people think, all right, well, why would she have anything to offer me if I'm, 2 years in practice or just 30 years in practice and not ready to sell? There are so many things that I have learned in this process that's applicable to any point in your practice. And that's what's exciting. And that's really what I share. And I don't really share that much on the selling point. You want to sell your practice, you can call me, we'll talk about it. I don't need to bore everybody with that.
I think it's very fascinating because as you know, the majority of our audience, people that watch our show, are people that might be chiropractic students or new doctors that are newly opening their practice. And the most fascinating thing that I found when I was talking to you off air, Randy, is that what you do is so applicable for everybody. I would have never in my mind's I thought that, talking about an exit strategy, the anytime exit strategy would be appropriate for our audience. But, after listening to your story and this, Randy and I have been around the block a couple of times, right? So after listening to your story, you were in practice for 15 years. You had a tough pregnancy and you had to get out of practice. And guys, this stuff happens. So Randy is here to help us, and she's here to help you guys in giving you some strategy, and giving you some steps on how to prepare. Always be prepared in case something were to come up where you would have to have an exit strategy. That sound like what we're going to talk about today, right?
Yeah, and the worst phone calls I get are the ones that somebody referred a spouse, a significant other, a CA from an office, and I answer the phone and they're already crying, which to me, I already know what the phone call is. And the doctor of the office suddenly passed away. And I'm going to tell you, it's very rarely like the 60 and 70-year-old person. It's often like the 40-year-old that just had a heart attack on the golf course, or, got into a car accident or something. Listen, we know life has tragedies that can often accompany it. And those are the worst phone calls that I have, because I know essentially as much as, I'll virtually hold their hand and help them and cry with them, there's probably very little we could do because people are not prepared.
Mhm.
Wow.
Got it.
Yeah, that's huge. And I'm just kind of spinning my wheels now thinking about that. Just backstory for me, I'm a first year chiropractor. Just opened my practice 7 months ago. And you always hear like start with the end in mind, right? But
Yeah.
to be honest, that really hasn't even, I just feel so fresh that none of this is even, you know, I haven't even thought about it yet. So what's some advice you would give to someone like me or some students or students or young chiropractors who have just started their practice? Like what are some things I should be thinking about? Maybe some steps I should be taking now.
Yeah. So, like anything else in life, it's easy to do something the right way than to try and fix it when you're doing it the wrong way, right?
Mm.
So a lot of what I'm going to share with you is, what people might think is basic business sense, but you'd be surprised how in all the interactions I have with chiropractors over the course of a year, there's very few people that have this stuff, current as needed. And some of them like don't have anything, and they could be in practice. I sell practices sometimes of people that are relatively new in practice. We just did one. They were in practice 4 years, all of a sudden had a couple little kids, and now want to go back and live near the grandparents because now they realize family is important. When they were younger, they wanted to get away from their family. So you can't always have the mindset of, well, I'm only in a few years. This is not something I ever have to think about. So we'll go through just some of the what I call common sense things. And like Dr. Nicole said, we always say your exit strategy is not always your choice. And that's so important to really understand. Listen, most of you, although maybe not when you're super young, like Colton, you have life insurance policies and you have car insurance, right? You hope you never need it. But if you do, it's there. So this kind of falls into that mindset. Your business is most likely, other than maybe a large home, going to be the biggest asset that you have throughout your life, okay, for you and for ultimately your family. So making sure that you are always what I refer to as market ready. That's how you have to think. Even though, Colton, you have no intention of selling a practice that's not even a year old, you have to always say, is my practice market ready for sale if something happened? Okay. And again, sometimes it's not, a crisis or something. It's just all of a sudden you get an opportunity, you meet a girl in Arizona and, you want to get married. It's also, well, she wants to live by her family. These things happen all day long. I hear these stories constantly. So that's why we always say, always be market ready so you don't have to get market ready. Okay. So that's kind of the process that we follow. And we refer to this as always being prepared and having an exit strategy. Okay. So one of the things that we always talk about, and this is really big, and some of the things that I'm going to mention are the things that I know buyers, especially younger buyers like yourself, are instantly going to look at. I'm a dinosaur. We didn't even have computers when I was first in practice. We had one-write systems. I mean, you guys don't even know what that is. So computers and your iPads, if you're using iPads, all of that stuff should always be updated. And today we all know that these computers, you're probably looking at 3 years before you want to constantly update. And even if it's still working, there's a lot of chances that some of the software and the support, no longer is available because that's how they get you to always buy new things. So you have to look at this is part of the cost of doing business. So you want to keep them updated and you want to make sure that they always have whatever features you need to run your business, which today is mostly from a technology standpoint. So I say 3 to 5 years. I'm going to say even in what we do, we update all of our computers every 3 years, because you don't want to wait until they don't work, because that obviously affects your business as well. Yeah, right. What's the worst thing? Your main computer is down, or your server went down, or something like that. So not that can't happen if something's a little newer, but have it in your mind that this is part of doing business. Every 3 years, I'm going to invest in new computers or tablets, whatever you're using in the office. And the next thing is your office management systems, more commonly referred to as your EHR. This is so critical right now because we have like a lot of older docs that we didn't really need EHR. And now it's really critical and it's an integral part of a practice. And the other thing I run into is even some people that have EHR programs, they have some that are outdated. This is where we run into that again. So there's no longer support for them. Well, that doesn't help anyone or even your team. If something goes wrong with it, who are you calling to get help? So then you're in a forced situation. Again, it's like a computer or server that's down. Now you didn't keep your EHR current and updated. And now something happens, nobody can support it. Now you're in a crisis mode because your business really relies on that. So I don't care what EHR program someone uses. That's personal preference. Whatever you're comfortable with, whatever helps you, whatever also is the easiest sometimes. And that's something really important that people look at, because when we have practices that don't have EHR, I know a buyer is going to want to decrease that price by about $20,000, because to integrate EHR into an established practice, you're somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000, not necessarily to buy the program, but you have to manually pay someone to upload all that data for anywhere from the last 12 to 24 months, whatever someone wants. So it's very time consuming. So always keep everything current. If you're running an EHR that you know they'll send you those messages, we no longer support this product, well, start looking and find something that you can transfer the data that you have and not have to start from scratch. So that's an important one. Keeping it fresh. And what I mean by that is more today than when I was in practice, when things were a little bit simpler. People are looking a little bit for that kind of spa vibe when they walk into an office, because even medical doctors are doing this now. You know, so if I really think that like every 3 years, your office should be painted. And probably every 5 years, maybe a little more, it depends upon what you have on the floors, they probably need to be replaced. And keep as much as you can. Obviously, you want it to still reflect, you know, what you're trying to convey to people, but that spa-like kind of feeling is something that people are impressed with when they walk in. It's their first impression. If you have the finances to work with a designer, if you're going into a new building, if you're moving your office or you're buying one, or you just really haven't updated your office in a while. And for you, you know, students out there that might go out and buy something, you know, a few years after you graduate, there's a good chance you're going to have something that aesthetically you need to update. So once you get it, that it's yours, maintain it properly. Trends change. You know, you might spend $50,000 or $100,000 redoing a kitchen in your house, but guess what? In 10 years, it's outdated. You know, trends change, styles change, the things that people are looking for change. And I'm not saying someone, if you had to sell your practice, isn't going to buy it because you have carpet instead of, you know, luxury vinyl flooring, but it just makes it that much easier when it's like buying a home and someone walks in and it's what they call drop furniture ready. It's that same kind of vibe. They don't feel like they have to, okay, I'll be here for a few months because Dr. Ross said don't change anything, but then we're going to paint, and then we're going to change the counter, and then we're going to put down new floors. And they're just calculating in their mind. So keep everything fresh. Your patients will really appreciate that. And down the road, it will serve you. And it feels good to walk into a nice space. You know, it helps your whole energy. You don't want to be in somewhere that's kind of dingy and sterile looking and not homey. You want a little bit of that homey effect, especially with chiropractic. We're not sterile like the medical profession. So we want to convey that more welcoming, you know, homey kind of effect. This is probably the biggest one that I have conversations probably daily. And it's about keeping your financials current and up to date. So that means your tax returns, your profit and loss statements, your balance sheets. Now, some of you might not even know what those things are yet because you're not in business, but write them down, because as soon as you are, you need to know them. You should keep a current list of your equipment and the value of your equipment. And certain other, you know, office furniture and things like that might have value. If they don't have a lot of value, then it's probably not as pertinent. You should keep a current list of what your office overhead is. This is a really big one because some people are shocked when they constantly review this and all of a sudden see some places that they might be spending money that you kind of forget about and really isn't relevant. So that's a really important one. Keep these current, keep them somewhere where someone can access them if need be. So whether that's a spouse or you have, you know, an office manager or an accountant, an attorney, someone that you trust that can keep this there at least current for 3 years. It teaches you really, really good habits. And the other thing that's important when it comes to that is understand your financials. Don't just have them. In other words, if I take a look at your tax return, I'm not saying that you're going to know what page 42 means, where your accountant buries something weird that you don't know what it is. But you should have a basic knowledge and understanding. If you don't ask them to explain it to you, you should know what your P&L means. So your profit and loss statement, that ideally, if you're tracking your business properly, you should do monthly. You should know what all those itemized things are. And if they're grouped, like sometimes they'll just be groups of things that an account will, they'll be just be like insurance. We'll ask them, What's the breakdown of that? Is it, health insurance for you? Is it health insurance for your staff? Is it disability? Is it, office overhead? Have an understanding of your financials. It not only will make you prepared, but it's going to make you a way better business person. And one little note on tax returns. I'm not a huge advocate of going on extension. If you have to, for some reason, go ahead and do it. But if you're doing it because you're too lazy to get your accountant the information they need, that's a really bad strategy. Okay. Chiropractic equipment, I mean, this should kind of be a no-brainer, but if your tables, as you're using them more frequently, look worn, or they even get little rips in them, like the foot places when the foot place is a little separate, often will get worn and even torn because people are always stepping on that. Call an upholsterer. There's tons of chiropractic upholsterers. Doesn't matter where you live. There's people that will come out. It's not even a lot of money. Don't let your stuff. I see pictures of people that have duct tape on top of a hole in the middle of a table. That makes me go like this. Like, why? Spend a couple $100 and get it recovered. It looks like new. You don't have to buy a new table. That's the beauty of that equipment. You don't have to buy brand new, but keep it fresh, keep it. No, do you really think a patient's going to be impressed when they come into your office and you bring them to get adjusted and then they're lying on a table that has duct tape on it? Come on. Bad luck. And other chiropractic equipment. There's always trends. There's these ebbs and flows with what's kind of trendy in our profession. Like when I was in practice, we didn't have a lot of technology. We had ultrasound, we had stim. If you were a big deal, you had interferential and hot packs. Like that was it. Like now, if you don't have laser and decompression and shockwave, like those are the things that are really popular now, that again, as long as it goes according to how you want to practice, but stay on top of the trends. Go to conferences and seminars and see I was just at a conference in Buckhead, and even though I'm not in practice, I get such a kick out of playing with all these new things that are out there and learning about them and seeing how they can impact how you practice and your patients. And a lot of them are profit centers to earn a little bit more money. So stay on top of that. You should never have an old, outdated office, even as far as your equipment. Okay. Reviews now are the thing. Now, 10 years from now, it might be different. So have a system, whether it's you directly or one of your staff members, that you're asking for Google reviews. If you don't ask for them, you're not going to get them. And even when you ask for them, you're only going to get a percentage of them. And that is something that, listen, we're all consumers on here today. When you go to look at something, what's one of the things you look at? It's just how now we're programmed as a consumer, that we're going to look at, okay, there's, 5 chiropractors that come up right away, and 3 of them have, less than 10 Google reviews. One has 50 and one has 200. Chances are we're going to choose between those 2 top ones. We're going to ignore the ones that don't have any Google reviews. So you can have challenges with that. Yes, someone can leave a negative review and you don't want to get, into a fight with someone on social media, but whoever manages your social media or your virtual world should be able to kind of school you on that. We could always do another class on how to handle that, but don't get into a fight with someone, because if someone leaves a negative review and you reply, other than if sometimes you get those people that they're not even a patient, like you've never seen them. You're in New Jersey and they live in California. Other than that kind of thing that happens sometimes, don't argue with people, because you're going to comment, they're going to comment, and the more feeds you have, guess what? You just push that to the top of the Google list. So, so you know what? The thing is, if you're providing a good service, you'll get Google reviews. Listen, we all going to get one now and then. I have one that drives me crazy, but what are you going to do? And it was actually, I took the hit for my client that didn't want to sell them the practice, but they blamed it on me and they gave me a horrible Google review. Thank God I have a good marketing manager, because he's got it buried somehow. Your website, another one of these technology things. I don't want to go onto a website and see a website that's 10 years old. There's no reason for that. And if you're with a company that has templates that chiropractors or other healthcare providers use, they're usually pretty good at offering you updates. But today, a lot of people have their own custom websites and they use their own designers and all those things. Make sure that again, we're probably back to 3 to 5 years, that you are changing that and updating it to a new footprint, because they do change frequently in different styles and different designs, or they learn are more eye-catching and what gets someone to click somewhere and things like that. So make sure a good web designer, a team that does that, is a part of, all of your supportive staff members. And don't think that it's, oh, this is a chore, I don't want to do this. The first time you do a website is a lot of work. But once you have it, changing it to just a little more modern look or a different template really should be something that any good web designer, can do for you. And that's really important that you're constantly adding. If you just have a website that's just sitting there, Google's just going to crawl right over it because you have nothing of current value. So make sure, whether you're doing it yourself or you're hiring someone, doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing has to be perfect. Better to have it out there and not be perfect than to not have it out there. Okay, that's really important. Your staff, your support, make sure, whether it's one person or 10 people, make sure that they're well trained. Make sure that literally if we slid you out and slid someone else in, they would just pick up, where we left off the day before. They should have that level of training, and you should always be engaged with them so that they feel valued. And when they feel valued, they're going to stay with you until such time that it's time for you to pass the torch to someone else. And then, you can assure them that their continued employment is an integral part of the success. But having a trained team is something that's really value added when someone comes along to buy your practice, very much so. If your practice allows and supports for it, having an associate doctor is a really good plan. Now, some people think, I'll have an associate doctor because when I get to the end, that's who I'm going to sell it to. That's not always a great strategy. Sometimes it works, but probably more than 50% of the time that doesn't pan out. But here's something really interesting to know about chiropractic practices, and I don't think this will change. If you have a good associate in the practice, especially if over time they're seeing a majority of the patient base, you now have a very different product, I'll call your practice a product, to market if need be. It opens up the doors to a whole bunch of potential buyers that some are chiropractors, some are companies, some are investors. So it just creates a different product that you always have available if in turn you choose to or are forced to exit. It really is a very different model. And this is probably only maybe in the last 5 to 7 years. And I don't see that changing at all. If anything, it'll probably become more impactful if you have a well-trained associate that wants to stay with the practice with a new buyer. Okay. Office systems, we talked a little bit about EHR, but all of your systems that run your particular practice, and listen, everyone's going to have their own way of doing things, but again, make sure that everybody knows how to use them, including you. It shouldn't be things that just your staff knows. I say, when you own a business, I'm not saying you have to be able to wear every hat, but you should know how to, if need be. That's really important. So you really understand the inner workings of your business. So keeping, all the systems in your office running smoothly is really important. Making sure your team's always trained well. The worst thing is to have someone that doesn't know how something functions because they weren't trained properly. And kind of the last tip I give is to always have a current practice valuation. That's something that we do as a part of this exit strategy program that we have, but it should be kind of kept along with all your financial documents. It's a good footprint for you to understand your business year after year, because it goes a little beyond the stats that most of you will keep to analyze how things are going. It gives a little broader picture. And then it's always there, if need be, an updated valuation report, your updated financials for the last 3 years, all the current information that makes your practice market ready at any given time. Any questions based? I know there's a lot of information I just threw at you in one shot here.
No, I feel like
Notes.
my like big takeaway with that is like just like being due diligent and having just total awareness of what is going on in your office at all times. So whether you even don't have like even if we don't have the intention to sell anytime soon, those are all systems that are just in place for a viable business, a business that's going to be running properly because our systems are in order. We know what's going on in and around our office. So I don't know, that just spoke to me and helped me to realize like, hey, there's a lot of things that I can be doing just to maintain order in my office. Then eventually when it's time to sell, then it's ready.
And even if you're not selling, maybe 3 years from now, you want to invest in a new x-ray or some piece of equipment. A bank's going to want to see what your business looks like. So when you follow what I just shared, you got one click to share everything with a banker, and they're going to be like, wow, this doc's prepared. That makes you a better risk for them. So there's other times that don't necessarily have to do with you. Maybe you want to just take out a business loan for, you want to renovate you want to make that little more updated spa effect, and it's going to cost $50,000 and you don't want to go out of pocket. So anytime you own a business, you should, again, look at all these things that make you more efficient. And when you're more efficient and you really understand your business, I guarantee you're going to be more successful.
This was awesome. I took a ton of notes, Dr. Randi. So you had recommended every year practice evaluation?
Yep, we do a baseline and then we just do an update every year, which some of the information won't change, but obviously your stats, your financials change. Some things that we evaluate, like what's the payer profile, it's a bit of a moving target. But yeah, always having a current one, and it's sitting there with all those other financials. And anytime you need something, you are always prepared.
Yeah, awesome.
And, as chiropractors, and this is something that, Colton, they really don't teach you in school, even though they mention it, is you wear 2 hats. You're a doctor providing care, and you own a business. And there's not a lot of industries other than healthcare that are really like that. And unfortunately, within the healthcare education system, nobody really gives you what you need. You have to go out and get it when you're done. So this is just a little snapshot of how to make that business owner hat run a little bit more smoothly instead of, and even helps, what it really helps sometimes if things aren't going well. If you just bury your head in the sand and you're not addressing it, we all know how that's going to go. But, if you step up and you say, okay, I'm looking at this every month, I don't like what's happening. I don't like what's going on in my P&L. I don't like that my net's going down. Let me take a look at and see how I can change, whether it's something you change or you realize you need some support from a coach or anything like that. It really holds your feet to the fire a little bit if you want to. If you want to be lazy, you don't do any of these things. But that's not really the way to run a successful, business and career.
Yeah. And the reverse is true. Dr. Randi, you've probably seen this where, practice could be collecting a lot of money, like high revenue, but they could be spending even more. So sometimes that P&L report is like, holy shit, I made a lot of money, but oh my God, I spent more.
Yeah, because it helps you monitor your overhead.
Yeah.
Which is real. And you're right. I could have a practice that grosses $1 million and one that grosses, $400,000, and guess what? They make the same amount of money.
Yep.
Because of stuff. So, everybody has a little different way of how they look at it, and it really depends upon what your goals are. What are your goals in practice? And this can be one of those tools that helps you track that.
Awesome. Wow, this was invaluable information for us. So thank you so much for sharing with us. Is there anything else before we wrap up our podcast today that you want to add?
No,
Either one
just,
of you guys?
again, if anyone has any questions, they are already buying something, even, they're looking at an associate opportunity, or they're thinking about opening from scratch, you can feel free to call me. We do free consultations. There's no charge. If I can be of help and I can help someone avoid a pitfall that usually means an expense that they don't need to have or money they're losing, I'm happy to be here. And at this point in my career, this is my job, is to help the profession.
I love that. Colton, do you have any other questions for Dr. Ross?
No, just gratitude. Thank you for coming on. I think this was super
Yeah.
valuable. Kind of gave me a kick in the butt to organize a few things. So excited.
Cool.
Good. That's awesome. All right, everybody. Well, we're going to wrap up, and our deepest gratitude to Dr. Randi Ross for being with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And we will see you guys next week.